interested in helping expectant mothers navigate their mental health journey, but not quite sure how? Cherie Menon's career roadblocks and insights might help guide you towards a meaningful career in perinatal psychology. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learned in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this alumni spotlight, Dr. Amanda Krause speaks with Cherie Menon, a clinical psychologist whose career path took her from Melbourne to Townsville with gap years, travel adventures, and master's degrees along the way. Cherie reveals how those early academic struggles eventually led her to combine grief counselling experience with narrative therapy in her work with expectant mothers. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about embracing the unexpected detours in your psychology career journey. Enjoy.
Cherie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. To get started, would you be able to introduce yourself, please?
My name is Cherie Menon and I'm a clinical psychologist.
Cherie, one of the things I really want to get to know more about is your career trajectory. So from when you were an undergraduate studying psychology to now as a clinical psychologist, I'd love to hear a little bit more of the windy journey that happened in between.
When I finished my year 12, I had applied to get into originally a Bachelor of Psychology and Business. So in my 18-year-old self, I thought I might be interested in maybe like a career in HR, and then someone had told me psychology might be a great idea as well. And that was my first preference. And I didn't get into my first preference, and I ended up getting into a Bachelor of Psychological Science. So originally I was quite disappointed because I thought that was the career I wanted to do, but then I thought, no, let's pivot. It should be okay. So that was at the Australian Catholic University in Melbourne. My first year of uni, I think, as most people are, sometimes you're not quite ready to continue on your learning and you need a bit of a break. And I don't think I realized that at the time. So I had jumped straight into study, had the full uni life, took on all the social activities, and I don't really think I took my university studies very seriously. So I can remember quite vividly almost failing your initial like psychology A subject, like the core foundations. And I think I got like a pass, like just a pass. And I had to have a think at the end of the year, like, is this study for me? Is it the university? Is it the course? Or do I actually just need a break? So I decided to take a break. In that gap year, I traveled to Europe, I traveled to Canada and did a ski season, and I worked and just got a bit of life experience. And when I came back, I thought, no, I think I do want to be a psychologist. So once I had a better understanding coming into my second year of my bachelor, I took it a lot more seriously. I actually really enjoyed it. So that was really exciting for me to be able to, one, actually learn that I enjoyed potentially this career, and then have the grades and drive to follow through and to finish my last couple of years. So I finished my bachelor degree and I ended up getting into honours in psychology, and that was same thing at Australian Catholic University. But I found honours really difficult. Like I know for most people who, one, you've got the coursework at the same time, you also have been introduced to the idea of a thesis. And for me, writing is not necessarily one of my core skills. I had to work really hard on my writing skills. And I had a supervisor who really pushed me quite hard. And it was for my benefit to really advance that skill for me, knowing that in the future as a psychologist, but also as a professional, writing skills is going to be a really core foundation of your professional identity and your ability to kind of work in this field. So I was grateful for that. But at the time when I was studying and like having this supervisor who was, ripping apart and editing my work, I found it a bit soul crushing at the time. But it paid off. Like I finished my honors year. I had got like a grade of like a H2A. So I had the grades in order to get into a master's degree. And like I was saying before, just 3 years of study back to back, I needed another break. So I decided that I was going to take another gap year and go travel to Canada. So I had my year and then I came back and I had moved back to Melbourne. And I remember quite vividly applying for, it felt like over kind of 15, 20 universities to get into my master's degree. And I got declined on every single one. And I thought, like, what do I do now? Like, I'm not going to be able to become a psychologist unless I get this master's degree. What I did was I sulked for a little bit and thought my career was over. And after that, I had a friend who had shown me a master's of counseling and psychotherapy, and he had said, why don't you try something like this and get some experience? So that's exactly what I did. I completed a master's of counseling and psychotherapy, and whilst I was doing that, I volunteered for an organization called Griefline, and they're similar to Lifeline, but specifically for grief counseling. So I had opportunities as part of the master's degree and as part of my volunteer work to really expand my experience and skills within counseling. Along the way, when I was having my travels, I had also met my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, and he lived in Townsville. He had asked if I wanted to come visit him in Townsville. I ended up coming up here for a holiday and decided this is the place for me. I'm going to live here. So after my master's degree, I moved to Townsville and I reapplied for the master's degree at JCU. And I was very pleasantly surprised when I got in. So I did the master's over 3 years so I could still work part-time. And the thesis topic I picked was around a concept of reflective functioning, and I did it on like high risk parents as well. And it's been quite fitting because now the career that I'm working in is a psychologist within the perinatal psychology space. So I feel like that kind of fueled a fire of interest to work within like a maternal perinatal psychology space that I now fit in. And also having the experience of working in grief and loss, part of the perinatal work that I do at the moment is also within grief and loss around that space as well. One of my final placements that I did was actually at the Townsville University Hospital. It was in the sexual health clinic there. So that was my first experience of doing like clinical psychology work within a hospital setting in a multidisciplinary team. And when a job for a pediatric psychologist came up, I jumped on it. And I suppose the rest is history in terms of I've been working for the Townsville University Hospital ever since, starting in pediatrics and then eventually moving into more senior roles within the perinatal psychology space.
Thank you so much for sharing some of those roadblocks, because I think that's really going to resonate with a lot of people, that it's not necessarily you apply for everything straight away and you get in and you continue, that there is a bit of building that journey, and that could involve taking time off. It could involve volunteer work, other study, and a lot of different things to get towards where you'd like your career to be. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. How did you find your path to sort of being in the perinatal space now? How did you decide what you gravitated towards?
I think when I first started working at the hospital within the pediatric services, so I suppose doing child and family work, I was at the stage of my life that I didn't have children. Like I am now a mother of 2 boys. And prior to that, I felt like I was in that mindset of really being able to do child work, like relating really well with particularly teenagers within that space. But when I took maternity leave the first time and then came back to work within that space, while I still liked it, I also found that my mindset had shifted to really wanting to work with adults again and also with parents, because I could resonate so much with the trials and tribulations of becoming a parent for the first time and the challenges there. So I think my direction moved more into the perinatal space, also because I had taken a senior role as part of that pediatric service to work in the neonatal unit. So with the premature and the very sick babies and their parents, and majority of that, it is working with parents on how they're coping with having a child so sick or born premature and having a prolonged admission. So that kind of work again was kept moving me into this direction of working within that space. And then I had my second son and I came back, and this job opportunity to work in maternal fetal medicine and the Women's Reproductive Health Service came up, and I just thought, how fitting. So I felt just my stage of life that it would be a really good career move for me. And then also having that history of the pediatric and neonatal work, they kind of fit into a nice picture together for my career.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like now in the role you currently have?
Day to day, I work in outpatient services. So this would be mothers who aren't admitted to the hospital and they come and see me for therapy. So therapy that I can provide is antenatally, so while the woman is pregnant, but also up to a year postpartum as well. So you really have this wonderful continuity of care. Because it was a new service when I had got the role, part of that was service development. So I had a bit of a think of what I had done before in pediatrics, but also what I would have liked as a parent to have that continuity of care in terms of psychological support for such a vulnerable time. And the women that I work with aren't normative pregnancies, so they're high risk pregnancies. So it's whether there's something to do with the terms of the mother's health or the baby's health, or the pregnancy that would make it complex and high risk. So a lot of the women that present to me and also the couples that come to me come with things like anxiety or low mood or adjustment difficulties or distress in terms of a diagnosis and how to cope with that. And the other part of the work that I do is within the perinatal loss space. So whether someone's gone through a miscarriage or a stillbirth or a death in utero or a death within the neonatal space as well, we can work within there. And then the other part of that is the Women's Reproductive Health Service. So that's women who are deciding to have a termination, whether that be for social reasons, for lifestyle things, or also for medical reasons, whether there might be a diagnosis for the mother or the baby. So work within that space can be around supporting women who might have complex and difficult decisions to make, not to help them make a decision, but explore the reasons why the decision might be difficult or factors in their life that are complicating things, and then provide that support and care, working within the therapeutic space.
How does staying on top of the building research evidence feature into the decisions you make in terms of how you work with these clients?
Yeah, you definitely need to stay on top of things. And then I also think, because I have the luxury of building the service from scratch, I get to have time to research where the evidence is and then fit my model of care around that to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the vulnerable patients that we have. And then I'm also getting the experience as a therapist as well of different types of modalities.
Is there a modality that you are drawn to from the training and the work that you've done?
I think narrative therapy, because a big part of working within the perinatal psychology space is a concept called the reproductive story. So this is often the story that women and couples and families envision of their life before becoming parents. So they could have hopes and dreams and desires. And then sometimes the reality doesn't match up. And this can often be where distress, anxiety, and depression can come from. So say a mother had an idea of having this normative pregnancy without complications, and she wanted to go through and have a beautiful water birth as part of the birth center. And then all of a sudden her pregnancy, through no control of her own, became high risk, and so many uncontrollable factors that the mind has to adjust to and accept as part of it, as part of not having control a lot of the time of how a pregnancy progresses or how a birth progresses, can mean that the expectations and reality don't often meet up. And when they don't, I find that's when we do have coping difficulties or a sense of grief and loss over a birth or a pregnancy that they might have wanted to have. So yeah, that's a big part of work within my space, is learning someone's story and learning where the disruptions along the way have happened, because they're moments that we can actually go back and reflect on. And it's like with trauma work as well, it's creating a coherent narrative to someone's experience of an event in order to understand, to reflect, and to make sense of and process.
That's really interesting. And I suppose using that idea of a narrative, is there anything that you would want to tell your younger self in terms of exploring a career in psychology that might be some words of wisdom for our current and future graduates in the field?
I think what I'd like to tell my younger self is that it's okay if it takes time, that you don't have to rush this career, that I see psychology very much as a lifelong career that I could do until I'm 80, as long as my mind is still ticking away and things are working as they should be. And that through life experience and maturity and experiences like travel and meeting new people and trying out different varieties of career and job opportunities, that you'll get a better sense of what you want to do and if this is a right career fit for you, and it doesn't need to be rushed. And then understanding that as much as it is about book smarts and academics, it definitely is about drive and consistency and perseverance in order to get there. So a big part of, I think, what I reflected on in my time of setbacks and roadblocks was that I didn't give up, and I kept reviewing along the way whether this was a career path for me, or if I needed to pivot, or if I needed to try something else, or accepting that failures and mistakes are all part of the learning experience. And also they've just been able to give me so many different experiences in life to still be a psychologist, but I think I'm a better psychologist because of that experience.
I think that's a wonderful point to end on, is that, all of these pivots and roadblocks help us figure out what our values are and what we want to do with our lives. Cherie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
You're really welcome. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our psych community. If you'd like to show your support, or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.